Meeting to order at 10:01. Agenda item number 1, public comment. All written public comments that are received prior to 4 p.m. the day before the library board meeting will be compiled and will be added as supplemental material for the library trustees and the public to review prior to the meeting. To make public comment during the meeting, the public must call 775-783-6024 and leave a voice message, which will be played for the library board of trustees and the public. Any written public comment received after 4 p.m. the day before the library board meeting will be compiled and added as supplemental material to the county's website and distributed to the library board of trustees within 24 hours after the meeting. So at 10:01, public comment is open.
This is Veronica Hallam. We did receive two emails yesterday after 4. I will submit those as supplemental material after the meeting. And we have received one public comment voicemail, and I will play that for the trustees now.
Hello, my name is Deborah Caldwell-Stone, CALDWELL-STONE. I am director of the American Library Association Office for Intellectual Freedom, and I am making this comment in support of Library Director Amy Dodson. In the letter signed by the President of the American Library Association, the Nevada Library Association, and United for Libraries, and as confirmed by the investigators' report, Ms. Dobson's actions in proposing consideration of a diversity statement for an authorized and appropriate response to calls by ALA and other library organizations to address diversity in the library. And the statement was consistent with statements issued by ALA and other library systems in Nevada and in the United States. The American Library Association wholeheartedly supports the work that Amy Dodson has undertaken to ensure that the Douglas County Library is a welcoming and inclusive space for everyone in Douglas County. And we encourage the Douglas County Library Board to support her and her work. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so far that is the only voicemail that we have received, and it was received at 9:57.
Thank you, Veronica.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have received another voicemail. I will play that now.
Hi, my name is Jen Wilson, and I'm calling to voice my support for Director Amy Dodson. I want to again commend her for her efforts to bring the Douglas County Library on board the movement for racial justice and for her willingness to state the inarguable fact that Black Lives Matter. And while I'm glad that the investigation reached the conclusion that Director Dodson had not violated policy in any way, I would like to see the board take responsibility for their actions in this situation, to apologize to Director Dodson, to apologize to the people of Douglas County for wasting library funds on a pointless and frankly racist investigation, and to outline their plans to take personal responsibility and do better in the future. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that one was received at 10:04.
Okay, it's 10:06 and public comment has been open for 5 minutes. Are there any others, Veronica?
There have been no others.
Okay, then at this time, public comment will be closed. We'll move on to agenda item number 2 for possible action. Discussion on the approval of the proposed agenda. The Library Board of Trustees reserves the right to take items out of order, to combine 2 or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove the items from the agenda at any time. All items designated for possible action shall include discussion by the Board of Trustees, and they may take action to approve, modify, deny, take no action, or continue the item. And I would like to, on agenda item number 7, or I'm sorry, agenda item number 8, to move items C through H to the January meeting. Amy has got the revisions for the 2 that we discussed at the November meeting, but these other ones she'll need more time to do.
And Chairwoman, if I might, I would also request to pull item number 9 from the agenda. We discovered after creating the agenda that there was a conflict with a new county policy on that one. So if we can pull that one and potentially revisit it later, that would be great.
And Mark, did you have something?
I was just going to second your motion, and I can also, I can make a motion. I'm not sure where.
Have we had a motion to approve the agenda? Do we make the motions before or after we approve it?
And Carrie Rosser with the DA's office, for the record, if we're going to be changing it, it would be best to change it before approving it and then approve it in a modified version.
Then I'll move that we accept the changes proposed by the chair and by the attorney for the agenda.
I will second.
Okay, as a motion and a second to remove those items and then go forward with the rest of the agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 3 for possible action. Discussion on the approval of the minutes of the November 24th, 2020 regular meeting. Okay, and I had 2 items, one for clarification. On page 11, and number 13, about midway through, it says Vice Chairperson Rogers stated that because the library is county library and is funded by the library, I think that should say funded by the county.
Yeah, I saw that. So, no.
And then on page 12, under item number 15, about halfway through that paragraph, it says, she stated the trustees should have some training with the HR department and finance and other county entities since the board is responsible for the tasks, I believe it was, instead of tax. You're muted, Veronica.
Thank you. I listened to that a few times, so thank you for clarifying that.
Did anyone else have anything for the minutes?
I had some questions, but also on page 12 at the top, under 14, the first line, it should be at the last couple of meetings. Need to insert of. And and down at the bottom of page 12, the 4th sentence up from the bottom, where it says they are should be taken out because the officer is singular. I had a lot of questions, but not changes maybe.
Well, what's happening right now? Yeah, what's happening right now is when they're returned, they are put in a.
And Bonnie, what were you talking about up under number 14?
In the first line,
Mm-hmm.
it should at the last couple of meetings.
Oh, okay. And did anyone else have anything? And Veronica, you got those changes?
I did, thank you.
If you think they're up to date with city card,
Does someone have sound on in the background? I keep hearing another conversation.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm sorry, that might be me. I'm in the office and there's conversation going on in the other room.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with those corrections.
I second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, the consent calendar. Items appearing on the consent calendar are items that can be adopted with one motion unless pulled by a trustee wishing to have the item or items further discussed. When items are pulled for discussion, they will automatically be placed as the next item for discussion or may be continued until another meeting. And the approval of the grant fund claims for November, December of 2020.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Was that you, Bonnie?
Second.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 5 for possible action, discussion and review of the budget performance report summary and the gift fund summary.
Hold on just a moment while I pull that up.
Okay.
My computer froze for a second. There we go.
This is Bonnie again. I have a question about small equipment, 8,819. Is that still the phones?
Yes, that was a question that I think you brought up last month. The charge there for $8,800 was for the phones. We had that project approved in the previous fiscal year, but then had a shutdown in the budget freeze, or a spending freeze, I should say, because of the pandemic. And so that project was delayed and did not get completed until the current fiscal year. And so that's why the charge is showing up now. But all of those funds will be moved forward and it'll balance out as soon as the audit is over. I'm happy to answer any questions about the budget. As the cover sheet shows, we're at a 41% right now, and we're halfway through the fiscal year. So we're managing the budget very well and conservatively.
And my only concern, Amy, is the items that show that we're at 207% or 147%. When will we move funds to cover those so that they're at a more reasonable amount?
Well, that's a great question. The finance department will be revisiting our revenue in January, and at that point, we'll know where we stand in terms of revenue. Those are items that most of which we cannot fill with the adjusted opening fund balance, which we'll get to later in the agenda. But those funds should show up, we hope, in January's revenues. And the CFO has talked to me about that. So while there are still holes in the budget right now, we hope that those will be resolved as revenue comes in later on in the year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions about the budget report?
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 6 for possible action. Discussion and possible action on the 2021 adjusted opening fund balance, providing direction to the library director on distribution of funds.
Okay. In your packets, there's a spreadsheet of what funds we'll be getting as part of the adjusted opening fund balance. This is something that we discussed at the last meeting. And the grand total of what we're going to transfer in is roughly $338,000. Since the agenda was done, I've had a couple of conversations with our CFO, Terry Willoughby, and there are a couple of things that I recommended in your packet that we cannot use the money for. And that was just a miscommunication, no big deal. So these funds, the $338,000, can be used for one-time expenses. That can be things like capital projects, equipment, computers, furniture, carpeting, things like that. We cannot use it to make up for what we lost as a result of the budget cuts, and I was unclear on that. But now that I've talked to Ms. Willoughby, we've straightened it out. So what we need to decide today is which categories we're going to use the money for. We don't have to have exact amounts at this point. That can come later. But for now, they do need to know which categories we would like to use the funds for. And by categories, I mean capital projects versus equipment and technology. And we can use some of it for library materials, but not all of it. The only library materials we could buy with this money are things that would be over and above our normal budget. So for example, if we normally buy, 2 copies of the World Book Encyclopedia, we could buy a 3rd copy with this money because that's more than what we would normally purchase. Does that make sense?
Okay, and we go through what expenses that's on this sheet that we cannot use it for.
Okay, great question. We can use it for 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 items, so small equipment, circulating technology, library materials with the caveat that I mentioned, and computers and networks. We cannot use it for the bookmobile because that's a normal operational expense. So cross that off your list for now. We cannot use it for janitorial service. So cross that one out as well. Or office supplies. We can use some of it for cataloging and processing related to whatever materials we decide to buy, but not all cataloging and processing. And the same goes for circulation supplies. The last item on the list is allowable, the portable computer lab. So those 4 items on that list, again, that's bookmobile, janitorial, office supplies, and circulation supplies. We won't be able to use the funds for that. However, there are some building improvements that we could do. There are some materials that we would need to buy, and equipment and furniture. So that answer your questions, I hope.
Yeah.
So great. So today we just need to decide capital as well as other expenses. We don't have to pick exact items or prices at this point. But for instance, if the board wanted to put, say, 150,000 towards capital, and then the rest of it towards something else, that's a decision that we would need to do today. But you don't have to decide exactly if we're going to get new carpet or not. I hope that makes it a little clearer.
I'm trying to understand how you're building a roof over the book drop.
Oh, good question. The book drop outside at the Minden Library is out in the open. But one of the requests from staff was to get a roof or an awning over the book drop. That would help prevent the book drop from freezing in the wintertime. Usually when we get snow and it starts to melt and then refreeze, the locks and the drawers for the book drop will freeze up. and it's very difficult to get things out of it if it won't open. And it does get a lot of snow on it. So we would want to get some kind of awning or carport or something over it just to keep the snow off of it. The other improvements that I suggested were carpeting in Minden. That's something that we've needed for a long, long time. And some new shelving.
And Amy, would the 150 cover those 3 items, or does it need to be closer to the 200?
150 should cover the roof over the book drop and the carpeting. I don't know about shelving yet. We'd have to get estimates. We haven't had time, to do that because this all just happened so fast. But we could get some of the shelving for sure under that 150. I do recommend that we add a significant amount to library materials, maybe not 90,000 because this isn't, as I said, a one-time thing, but we do need to add some to materials. For instance, China Spring is in desperate need of new materials that we don't normally budget throughout the year. We have a very small budget for China Spring, in other words. So if we could add some to that collection, that would be really great. And we do need some new computer equipment, some new office chairs and things like that. So just to be super clear, when we find out about revenues in January, the CFO is going to go over all of that with me and other department heads to find out what has come in and where we can fill some of those gaps that were created by the budget cuts. And so not only will it make our budget report look better and not have, 200% in some lines, it will also allow us to make up for what we didn't have for things like office supplies or, janitorial. There's another one. So it's not that these will never be funded. It's just going to be funded out of different money.
The janitorial service is the contract service. Is that the additional money it's going to cost us this year?
Yes. We normally paid about $22,000 a year for janitorial, but the county entered into a new contract with a new service company after the beginning of the fiscal year. And so that has driven the cost up by $8,000 for the year.
But we can't do that. Is that right?
We can't do that today. No, you're right. So my recommendation would be to do at least 150,000 in capital projects, maybe add about 40,000 to library materials so that we can get some things we normally couldn't get. And that would include electronic materials. And then probably another 10 to 20,000 on small equipment. I had said 12,000, but of course we can change that. And we definitely should talk about a portable computer lab.
What does that mean, Amy?
That means that once we're back to normal operations, we would have a computer lab that lives inside a cabinet that also charges it. And that means that we could take a number of computers anywhere we want in the library or even up to the Lake Library. And then those laptops would be enough to teach a class. So for instance, we could teach a class on how to use library databases, and all of those computers would be in that sort of portable hub that rolls around. Because we don't have a computer lab, we don't have an enclosed space to teach classes. It would be really great to have that opportunity, and the best way to do that is with laptops instead of desktop computers, and to have those in a rolling unit that we could use anywhere.
And how many were you thinking in a cart?
Probably 20.
And would they be Chromebooks or laptops?
Probably laptops, most likely. And at the end of the grant that we got for laptops, we'll be able to keep those and use those for whatever purpose we like as well. So a year from now, we'll have lots of laptops. But anyway, that's just one expense that I'm suggesting. The board could vote to dedicate all of the funds just to capital projects. That's certainly allowable. Or you can split up however you like.
Amy,
Well, I
have-
personally like the idea of a laptop lab.
Yeah, I agree.
I do. I like the idea of expanding service to the community and involving the community. If that would go toward doing that, then I would support that. If it's going to be just a lab that's sitting there, I don't.
Right.
I think we have a lot of computers in the library that maybe need upgrading. Can we do that with this money?
Yes, we can. Definitely.
I think that might be a good expense.
Okay, great. And also, depending on what we get and how portable it is, we could potentially take these computers out into the community, say to the community center or the community center in TRE, or even up to the lake and do outreach classes outside of the library, but in another facility.
I read in the paper all the time, all the things that Carson City's doing. And I'd like to see us be, if we have ways to be involving in the community. Some of the Google Labs or some of the things like that would be very helpful for us. It would say to the community that we're out there and we're doing something.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, if everyone is in favor of supporting that, then I might add some funds to that project, maybe up to 20,000.
Would that include upgrading some of the computers in the library?
No, that's a separate budget line. On the sheet that I gave you, I wrote down 34,000 just to get to the exact number. Obviously, it doesn't have to be 34. It could be 35 or 30 or whatever you please. But that's the line where I asked for some upgrades for our computers in the buildings.
Okay, now I'm confused. So the 34 would be the upgrades in the building, and then an additional 20 would go towards this lab? Okay.
Correct. That's correct.
Additional 20 on top of the 10 that you have in there now. So for a total of 30 or a total of 20?
Total of 20.
Okay, all right.
Amy?
Yes,
This is
Mark.
Mark. You had listed shelving as a possible item to spend money on. And I know that we've talked about shelving over the past few years. And if you could refresh us all on what any of the issues are with the current shelving, why new shelving might be.
Sure, absolutely. The shelving that we have in the library, well, it was acquired at different times. The shelving that we have in the adult area is a mixture of wood and metal. But we do have a lot of shelving that is all wooden shelving. And honestly, that's the worst kind of shelving to have because it's so reactive to temperature and climate. That wood can start to break down. And a couple of years ago, we did have one section that collapsed. Luckily, no one was hurt and none of the books were damaged, but a shelf did collapse, which caused others to collapse. And we had that repaired. At the time, we didn't have any money to really put into new shelving. We did have that section repaired, but that whole upper level of the library has all wooden shelving. So that is potentially going to die over time. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the children's department shelving is in great shape. So we would not need to replace that. But we would need to replace the shelving in the adult areas, especially in the upper level. And again, I don't have a quote on that, so I have no idea what we're looking at. But once we get that information, we can decide if we want to spend money on that. As I said earlier, you really only have to decide bigger categories today, capital versus operational. And we can decide later if shelving is more important than carpet, for instance, or what have you.
Do you have any estimates on carpeting?
No, they're rough estimates. It would be at least 50,000 for carpeting. A couple of years ago when we got new carpeting up at the lake, it was 25,000. So, and our building is much larger, and I've allowed for inflation, but we are looking for some quotes on carpeting, but we don't have those figures yet.
Amy, this is Mark again. And on the shelving, are there earthquake issues, or is it just the materials that the shelves?
It's just the shelving. They are at earthquake code, so we're not worried about that. So they are properly installed and so on. It's just that the wood will die over time.
My guess is that the shelving might be the cost of that might be way bigger than we have available to us. So I'm hoping there might be IMLS or state grants that might help with that because of the safety issues, number one. And then of course the preservation issues. I'm comfortable just allocating money as you're recommending. And it seems like shelving is something that's probably going to have to end up waiting.
Okay.
So are you going for option 1 or option 2, Mark?
I thought both options needed some correction from what Amy had presented us. Wasn't it the bookmobile that it shouldn't have been there? So perhaps if I'm not making a motion, but if someone's ready to, perhaps Amy could clarify and someone could do.
Okay. Well, we do have option 1 and option 2, and we can also come up with our own and scrap these all together. But under the operational, I would recommend that we do $20,000 for the portable computer lab, $34,000 for our existing computers and network equipment. And I'm adding this as I talk. $10,000 to $12,000 for small equipment and furniture, another $1,000 for circulating technology, and maybe $40,000 for library materials.
In addition to the 90?
No,
Okay.
subtracted.
Okay.
Because we can't use it to fill that big of a hole, basically.
Okay.
We can just use it for special items.
So the 90 becomes 40.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's
105?
yes. I was just adding that, yes. 105 pardon me, under operational, and then the rest capital. That would be my recommendation based on this conversation.
So 233 into capital and 105 into the operations.
Yes, that's the total.
This is Bonnie again. I do think this is one opportunity to take care of some of the capital things like carpeting particularly, and even some of the shelving if we couldn't do it all, because getting money for capital projects is virtually nil. So
That's
very difficult. So I would go along with that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move that we plan to spend $233,000 for capital projects and $105,000 for operational expenses. Does that sound right?
Yes.
I'll second them.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7. For possible action, discussion and possible action on revisions to the library's mission statement. The mission statement drafted at the 11/24/20 meeting is as follows. The mission of the Douglas County Library is to provide a comprehensive collection of library material, services, and programs with the support of qualified staff in order to meet the informational, educational, recreational, and cultural needs of all residents and visitors of Douglas County.
Thank you, Kate. That's the revision that we settled on at the November 24th meeting. And then the board asked that we consider it again today.
Unless there's any discussion on it, I'll make a motion to approve it as written there.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the mission statement. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 8 for possible action.
Kate, can I stop you for just half a second? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Before we go too far, I forgot to mention one thing with item number 7 and, number 6, which is the adjusted opening fund balance. I do have to still take this to IRC and get it approved by the county. I just want to make sure everybody knew that. I'm sure it'll get approved, but I think it's important that you know that it does have to keep going through an approval process. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Amy.
I'm
Say the
sorry?
first part again.
Oh, so everything that you just approved for that extra money has to go to the IRC and it has to go to the commissioners through final approval, just like any other project that we do. And so I really think they will approve it. I don't see them saying, anything different than what you've said, but I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that it's not 100% approved until those 2 steps are followed.
So we can't spend the money until that's done.
That's right, but it will be, I think, approved at the next commissioners meeting. So it won't take very long. Sorry, I had to go backwards, but thank you.
That's fine. And I can't remember, did I read number 8?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Agenda item number 8 for possible action. Discussion and possible approval or approval with modifications of revisions to update the library policies listed below. Policy revisions are needed to accurately reflect current technology, facilities, and professional practices. The following policies may be discussed. And item A is the computer internet use policy.
At last month's meeting, we discussed this policy and the board made some recommendations for changes and asked me to sort of clear up a couple of areas to make it a little bit easier to follow. So I think I've done that. The changes that you'll see are on page 3. And that's in line with what the board asked for last month, was changes to that page. And so I have made a few changes. They should be in red on your copy. And I also just sort of cleared it up a little bit.
This is Bonnie. I have some questions.
Okay.
On page 1, in the under acceptable use, the second paragraph says guest passes are available for out-of-area visitors. But do you give guest passes to people who don't have library cards?
Yes, occasionally we do that when it's necessary.
Guest passes are available and to other than out-of-area visitors.
Okay.
Because there are people in the community might want to go in to use it, but they don't want to get a library card.
Okay, well, I can add something about anyone who requests a guest pass or something along those lines. Sure. Okay.
And then the next paragraph, the library staff is available to assist patrons in the technical use of electronic resources.
Okay, let's see. Technical
I
use.
think technical is good because I can show you how to turn it on and how to access it, but I can't tell you anything else. So,
Okay, that makes sense.
and next to the bottom paragraph about minors under the age, it says sexually harassing, whether any attempt to public display, I guess, is made.
Well, it means if anybody can see what they're looking at or not. So in other words, it doesn't matter if anybody else can see it or not. It's still not allowed.
Okay. And on page 2, why did you take out time limits?
Because they didn't seem necessary anymore. Years ago when they were used more heavily, we did have people waiting in line, and so we had a time limit. But over the years, we discovered that time limits were more of a hassle for patrons who need to use them longer, and there weren't really any waiting lines anymore. It can take quite a while, for example, to do, a job application or a scholarship application for a student. Those things can take hours. So it really was more of a hassle for that type of user, especially when there was nobody waiting. There's no reason for the computer to just shut down in the middle of your work if nobody's waiting for it. So we found that we don't need time limits anymore. If there ever is a rush, we could certainly change that policy again. And usually people are pretty courteous about what they use, when they use the computers and for what time period.
Okay, I guess that's all I have there. So.
Okay.
And
the only one I had was on page 3 in the wireless network, where it said patrons are encouraged to utilize their own battery power. Patrons are expected to navigate. I just thought that was duplication of it. Just patrons are expected to utilize their own battery power and navigate wireless connectivity. Make it one sentence without patrons.
Gotcha. No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we want to have Amy bring this one back again for a final?
Any other questions or suggestions on this policy?
And Madam Chairwoman, Carrie Rosser with the DA's office. For the record, before the board takes action on this item, a member of the public brought to our attention that there appears to have been a little bit of a glitch for our voicemails during the opening public comment. And so it looks like there were a couple of comments that were received after the cutoff time, but the actual call may have predated the cutoff time. And so what I would like to do, if it would work for you, is have Veronica play the public comments that were actually received before the cutoff time, and she has a list of those. And then hopefully they pertain to items that come after now. And if they do, then we'll move forward and just having accepted these as a delayed opening public comment due to the technical problem. And if they apply to an agenda item on which the board has already taken action, then we may need to revisit how we're going to move forward. I haven't heard the content of any of the messages, so I don't know. So if that would work for you. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Carrie.
Okay, this is Veronica Hallam. I'll go ahead and play the first voicemail message.
Hello, my name is Nick Seapack, and I am a policy fellow at the ACLU of Nevada. I'm calling to express our support for the library director document and our concern for how the library board of trustees handled the publicly released diversity statement. This issue is not only important to our office, but to me personally. I was born and raised in Douglas County, and many of my earliest memories are from the visits to the library where we learned about the world and ourselves
I'm sorry, Veronica, I didn't understand any of that.
Okay. It looked like his voicemail he wasn't done making his message, but it seemed to have cut off. I don't know why it abruptly stopped right there.
Can you try transcribe the voicemail for us? I just didn't understand I couldn't understand what he was saying.
Well, I can replay it. I don't think it'll sound any differently. I can transcribe it and add it as supplemental after the meeting if you'd like.
Okay, great, yeah.
Okay.
And does it say what time that one came in, Veronica?
That one came through to my email at 10:07.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and play the next message.
Hi, my name is Charles McQuarrie. That's spelled CharlesMacQuarrie. I'm calling in support of Library Director Amy Dodson and the library's much needed statement that Black Lives Matter, and I'm also calling on the board to support that statement. The white supremacist backlash to the initial statement makes the stakes clear here. By continuing to investigate and undermine Director Dodson in the diversity statement, this library board is squarely implying that the Douglas County Library is not actually for all citizens of Douglas County, but actually instead only for the loud white racist ones. And contrary to what those loud white racists would wish to be the case, Douglas County is not actually comprised entirely of white people, and it is the responsibility of the library board to maintain the library as a safe space for all the citizens of Douglas County. Currently, the board is failing in that responsibility. Director Dodson is a library professional who crafted a responsible statement which was in line with national conversation and with professional best practices in the library field. I am urging the library board to clarify that the Douglas County Library is a safe space for everyone in Douglas County, rather than just the latest target of white supremacist vitriol. The board can easily do this by supporting Director Dodson and supporting the strong diversity statement that she made. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that one came through at 10:08.
Yeah.
I will play the next message.
My name is Nujay Jackson. I'm calling in support of Amy Dodson. I want to say first and foremost that I think it's disgusting the way that she has been vilified for taking a stance the way that other libraries have done so. It is absolutely disgusting to know that she is being treated this way over not even really necessarily making a personal statement regardless of her personal beliefs. She stood in support with a community organization and what a community organization like the library is supposed to uphold, as well as, went along with what the other libraries were doing as well. So for the board to be vilifying her in this way is absolutely an embarrassment to the board, and they should absolutely apologize to the community for the way that they have reacted to this situation and have treated Ms. Dodson. Black Lives Matter is a movement that is beyond a lot of communities' control right now. This is a movement that every community needs to be standing behind, especially a community organization like a library. I'd like to know if, the community board doesn't support Black Lives Matter. As a Black member of the community, then why would I support your organization if you don't believe that Black Lives Matter? Please do not vilify
Okay, that message came in at 10:09. The next message came in at 10:12. It looks like it's from the same person. It's the same phone number. However, I found that the names that come through on the email don't always match the person. So I don't know if you want me to go ahead and play the message and then stop it if it is the same person.
Carrie, is that appropriate?
Yeah, Veronica, if you don't mind, because that 10-12 timeline would have been the last one that could have been within the time period. So let's just see if it's the same person, then we'll include it in closing public comment.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Najee Jackson. That's N-E-J-A-E-J-A-C-K-S-O-N, and I am calling in support of Ms. Dodson. I want to say that I think it is absolutely atrocious the way that she has been vilified and coming out and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement.
It looks like it's the same. So if you want to
Go ahead and stop it. Okay. Okay, that was the last message received. The rest will be played at the end of the meeting.
Excuse me, I better tell you now. I just got a voicemail sent to me by a different Douglas County library. We frequently get things for other Douglas counties in America because there are several. And so there's one in Colorado in particular where we get things from each other. And so there was a voicemail left on their voicemail for our meeting. I haven't listened to it, but I just got it on my phone. I don't know if it's appropriate to play it or not.
And Madam Chair, if I may, Carrie Rosser with the DA's office, Amy, if you would like to include that in supplemental materials after the meeting, that is up to you. But in terms of actually leaving public comment, the telephone number for our line was listed on the agenda. So if they didn't call that one, then it would be appropriate to play it now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll do a supplemental. Thank you.
Okay, so
thank you. Now, revisiting how to deal with this, it sounded like all of the comments that we received really pertained to the items that will be heard later on in the meeting. And so at this point, I think it would be appropriate for the board to just keep in mind that these were received as opening public comment. They just didn't come through the system until after the fact. And so we'll move on with the meeting and go from there.
Carrie, I have a question for you. I'm sorry. This is Veronica. That first message that we played from Mr. Shepak, not sure how to pronounce his name. He sent an email with his transcription because he did say that his message was hard to hear and that it was cut off halfway through. So he sent the transcribed version. Do you want me to read that or just submit it as supplemental?
At this point, if we get any written public comments at this point, which that would be, then please include that in the supplemental materials for the board to consider, and we'll include those there.
Okay.
Thanks, Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now go back to where we were on the computer internet use policy.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, and did anyone else have anything? I know Bonnie and I discussed ones that we had.
No, nothing else, no, for me.
Okay, so Amy, do you want to make those changes and bring it back to the January meeting?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to 8B, which is library user suggestions and grievance policy.
Okay.
Bonnie again.
Well, I was just going to review that at the last meeting, we talked about this policy, and it was asked that I add some things about meeting with the director when there's a complaint and how to reach the board by email. So I've added those items as requested, but I didn't change anything else.
I'm I'm going to
Okay.
ask for a change. Instead of monthly, weekly. I don't think we get a lot. And, but monthly, if I have a complaint, that's a long time for me to wait. And I think weekly, it's easy to check that suggestion box and say, okay, do we need to do something right away, or can we work it through the process?
I think that's fair. It's fair to ask.
Okay.
And then I was confused that everything stays in this, or was the second paragraph going to be reworked with what you put in red? Because it kind of duplicates itself.
Oh, well, yeah, it kind of does, but I did add that at the request of the board last month. It was supposed to be, the part in red is supposed to be in addition to the first part of that paragraph. I think it's because previously the policy did not list how to reach the board. And I'm sure people know that they can, write a letter to our address, but it's good to add the library board's email address there.
No, I'm talking about the one in red, yours about the patrons are welcome to meet with the director.
Oh, that, yes.
And the paragraph right up above it, they're like duplicated.
Okay.
Because I'd say the second section in the second paragraph, the patrons are encouraged to submit their suggestions. Take that out because it's in the new red verbiage.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so I can make these changes and bring them back again next month. Is that okay? Any other input on that one? Okay.
Well, now that we're talking about it, that first sentence, it is the responsibility of each staff member to acknowledge and respond to casual or informal verbal complaints or suggestions from library patrons in a friendly and non-critical manner. So another way of stating it, it's the responsibility of each staff member to acknowledge just complaints or suggestions from library patrons in a friendly and non-critical manner. I don't know how casual or informal.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I think the staff is trained on what questions they can answer and what questions they should pass along to a supervisor or to the director. And so the word casual or informal is really up to the best judgment of that particular staff member. But we get so many different types of suggestions. Sometimes it'll just be, about one particular book. It could be, hey, this building needs more windows, or, lots of things that we get that are not necessarily something that, need to be addressed in a formal way. But if it is something that is something serious or important for the patron, then they're already going to be referred to either the director or the supervisor. So I think that sentence was just to let everyone know that the staff can acknowledge what they're saying and respond accordingly. But I can rewrite that if you like.
Rewrite it for a little, what would be maybe just to informal verbal complaints. Or
okay. Okay.
But then you'll change monthly to weekly.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on this policy? Okay, so Amy will bring that one back to the January meeting. And then we will move on to agenda item number 10, because number 9 was pulled for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding the adjusted library services and closures in response to the COVID pandemic.
And Kate, I think you were the one that asked for this to be on the agenda, so I'm gonna let you start that one out.
Well, I just wanted us to discuss how it's determined that the library gets closed and goes back to, no one in the building at all. And if you've consulted with the county in any manner, because I know they have a physician who advises them on things. So I just wanted some clarification on where that comes from.
Okay. Came from this particular time that was most recent, came from a couple different places. One being the governor's pause that he just extended, I believe yesterday or Sunday. And his call for gatherings to be smaller, for people to be in buildings in a capacity limit and so on. But then also we started getting information from patrons about things that, an example would be a patron will call and say, well, I just tested positive for COVID and I returned my library books. And of course, there's no way to really track them down since we're quarantining them. That's something that's very concerning because then we have to kind of consider everything to be contaminated, which we do anyway, but still it's a concern. And then we've had other patrons let us know that they tested positive and that they were in the library, the day before, or they'll say it while they're in the library. Hi, I have COVID. I'm here at the library. And so we were getting more and more concerned about safety. And so I made the decision based on that, that we needed to go back to just curbside service.
And have you given thought to expanding curbside service to every day instead of just the 2 or 3 days a week that it is right now?
No, it is every day right now.
Oh, it is at both.
Yeah. So at the Minden Library, it's Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4. So it's every day but Sunday. And at the lake, it's Tuesday and Thursday. I have given thought to expanding the hours at the lake branch. We have a new employee coming on board soon, and that will help alleviate the stress on the schedule. So I have given thought, depending on what happens and what comes from the governor or the county, I've given a lot of thought to increasing availability at the lake branch.
I listened to the governor Sunday and I listened to him before, but his recommendation is the same, that it would be 25% of the capacity that you're allowed by the fire code.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand what you're saying, but again, I think one thing that's important as a library is we are visible and we do provide service within the constraints set by the governor and by the county.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to see us go at least to 1 or 2 days where we offer inside services. At meeting the guidelines, 25% of the fire code, which I think you said someplace is 41 or something,
Mm-hmm.
I disagree. I think safety is the most important thing. And I think that, being open 6 days a week and being able to get books is the best that we should be able to do. And we need to keep the people working at the library as safe as the patrons.
I'd like to defer to the director's judgment on this because, particularly because of how short-staffed the library is. So there's not just about what is the director say is possible as our director has to decide if her resources can support.
I agree with Mark.
That is an issue on that.
I thank Amy for everything she's been doing to keep us safe. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Safety is always my first concern for the staff and for the public. We're seeing a huge increase in cases in Douglas County. It's multiplying very quickly. And I think that it's best to limit contact as much as we possibly can and still, manage to provide services. Other libraries are responding similarly, and I think most of the public understands. I have received 2 negative comments, and I told those 2 patrons that I would let the board know that they had complained about the library not being open. So I'm doing that. But I'll also say that the Washoe County Library is closed until January. They're not even doing curbside. And the Carson Library is just doing curbside. I believe we actually have more hours than Carson for curbside availability, not that it's competition. But we do have, I think, a large number of hours open for curbside compared to other libraries. We could also change curbside hours if we wanted to make them different on different days. There's lots of variations that we can do. But I will acknowledge that Mark is correct, that staffing levels are also definitely a factor.
And have you got any requests, Amy, for different curbside hours? Or
No.
Everyone seems to be fine with the hours you have?
Everyone seems to be fine with it, but I'm open to changing it if the board feels that's necessary.
No, if there hasn't been a demand for different hours, I would say the hours are fine.
What are the hours again?
10 to 4, Monday through Saturday. That's in Minden. And at the lake, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 to 4.
And is there somebody in the library after 4?
Yes, there are people in the library working all day. We just have a reduced number.
Extending so that if I work, I could get there at 5 or something to pick up a book.
Okay.
I mean, I think there may, and you don't know that because nobody's there to take it, you know, when they come, if they're coming after 4.
Right. Well, we could extend the hours of curbside and change them to, 12 to 6 instead of 10 to 4 on certain days. If that's what the board would like to do, I think that would be just fine. I have not received any feedback about the hours, positive or negative.
I think it's better to keep the hours consistent every day than change them, because that, I think, just adds more confusion and, possible frustration. Like, wait, I thought it was this, no, it's that on this day. And, it's just better. And it's easier to publicize. It's just easy for people to get in their, in their memory. And so I would vote for consistency.
Okay.
And what would be the possibility or time frame for adding at the lake another day of curbside?
Well, as I said, we have a new employee starting soon. He starts next week. Once we get some training done, then we could offer one more day of service up at the lake. I haven't picked a day yet. I would have to look at our statistics and talk to Julia about that, as she's still managing that branch. But I think that we could add one more day of curbside service up at the lake, probably as early as middle January or February at the latest.
And we have no guidance on when it will be opening back up until after this 3-week pause?
Right. Yeah, I don't have any information beyond that pause that the governor announced the other day until January 15th. So it all really depends on the virus and depends on what people are doing to help, slow down the spread of it. A lot of it depends on human beings as much as it does on anything else.
Well, the governor said it Sunday that the 3-week pause will continue to January the 15th.
Right.
So anyone have any other questions or comments on the services the library is providing right now? Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 11 for possible action. Discussion and possible action to revise the library board bylaws.
And I did send out a little reminder to bring you materials from the last meeting. So 11A and 11B were previously distributed. So does everybody have those? Okay. And if necessary, I can put something on the screen. But anyway, and so this month, at your suggestion, I submitted my recommendations. So that's 11C. And that was in your packet. And the parts that are highlighted yellow are changes that I made. And I've crossed out things that were removed.
Okay, and on page 1, number 6, it still shows 10 years for a former employee, which
Oh gosh, you're right.
that
Thank
has
you.
to be 1 year to align with county policy.
You're right. Thank you for catching that.
Well, I recommend that we go to the recommendations made by the subcommittee. And I appreciate your changes, Amy, but I think they're not specific enough to govern us during some of the situations. And then I noticed that you still leave July that we would meet, and there was a place here. Well, I'll just say this, because the committee met with Cynthia and with Doug and reviewed other libraries' bylaws, and these are more consistent with other libraries and with the legal requirements that we received than the other suggestions. And the main issue I think is important for the board, and I've learned this by sitting on the board for a few years, is the bylaws are so general, and the board, which was pointed out by the attorney that day, is that the board has to deal with issues that they have to look them up, or they don't know what they are, or they're trying to find them in the NRS or in the county policy. And if they're in the bylaws, the board has it in their manual and it's handy and ready to go. And so I think we need to have more definitive bylaws, because that's what the board is governed by, as well as Amy. And so I would recommend passage of the committee's bylaws with the changes we made last week. We were still discussing the term limits for officers. And I had an interesting thought about that. So that's, but that's my recommendation. And I noticed that in your recommendation, you took out the board's the responsibility for finance, and there's no way the board can give up its responsibility for finance, because it's a big responsibility.
What page are you talking about?
I'm just talking in general about your thing, but on page 5,
Section 9 it was.
The library director shall be considered the executive director of the library under the direction of the review of the board, and you took that out. And
no, I just made it a little different in the yellow part beneath that.
Well, you also said be responsible for fiscal management of the library's assets. That's also a responsibility of the board. And but anyway, I think that the proposed bylaws are more comprehensive and for the board, and they cover issues that we've encountered before and we need to clarify. And so that we would do that. And I had one other change I wanted to recommend to that. Where is it? It's on page, well, there's not, these are not numbered, but it's on the page under calendar.
Page 3.
Well, it would be probably 5 or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 11
No.
under calendar. Each January, new trustees shall be appointed by the Board of Commissioners. And I would add, and shall take office at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And these revisions were reviewed and recommended by Doug Ritchie and by Cynthia Gregory as well. So,
Mhm. Well, I still want to hear what the other trustees have to say, but I wanted to also mention at the bottom of page 5, the section on conflicts of interest. I think that's something important that we need to address.
page 5.
The last 2 items under conflicts of interest.
Oh. What would you change there, Amy?
Well, I just think that we need to add actually the part about trustees serving on other library related boards or committees. I don't think that trustees should be able to serve on both. I think that that's a conflict of interest.
Well, I think we looked at them, and and Doug and said that it could, and that's somewhere in that board training. It said they could, because we looked into that, because it was a question last year, and so legally they can.
Sure, that doesn't mean that we can't, include something in our bylaws like this.
Well, I know, but we can't deny them the right to do that.
Well, I think it gives the impression that there's, people who have more than one seat of power. I think it's about a distribution of power more than a technicality. So for instance, if there's someone who is the chairperson of the library board and the vice president of the Friends of the Library, that kind of gives the image that this one person is doing has a lot of control over the library when it shouldn't be just one person, if that makes sense.
Well, I will speak to that personally, because I was the president of the Friends at one time and was serving on the board, not at that time as an officer. But I don't think that's an issue, really. I don't. The people who are on the Friends and the Foundation are working in support of the library. And if anything, they add to what's going to be happening with it. But legally, I don't think you can deny them the right to serve.
Okay.
And we did look into that, because that was an issue. Because somebody questioned if I was the president of Friends, was that legal?
Yes.
And I actually did bring that question up, and Doug did say that it was not, or I believe it was Cynthia said it was not a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
I think that's a trust factor in it. If they're not, then you can handle it. But
yeah, that's
they're
true.
working for the benefit of the library, the same as the board.
Well, sure, absolutely. I agree with that. But, a former board member brought this to me when I was brand new in this position, because apparently it had come up before I joined the organization. So I know it has come up more than once. And I think that if you have one person in a position of authority in both the library board and, say, the Friends of the Library, I think that just shows or sends a message that one person has too much control, because both make financial decisions. Both people make decisions and recommendations. And I think that it's too much for one person. I understand what you're saying, that legally it's okay. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't look bad.
Well, I understand. And, but legally, it goes back to, I guess, well, I won't say that, but it's legal for them to do it.
Okay.
You can do it. You can't deny them the right. The same as you couldn't say you can't serve on the board for 10 years when the county says you can do it within a year. And so our bylaws should be legal. And I just know when I served, I did not do any. I never mentioned when I was on the board anything the Friends was doing. And I'm still on the Friends, but I don't mention anything the board's doing. I'm not an officer of the Friends anymore.
I see Amy's point in that the board could, the Friends of the Library could want to spend money a certain way, that they do, and they do a lot for the library. And then that person on the board could want to spend it the same way because the Friends of the Library did. I understand that. I feel it's a conflict, but whether or not we can change that, I don't know.
It's just they can serve, and they could even serve probably on the county commissioners if they wanted to. So, I mean, you can't deny a person their right.
I agree with Amy that that a person with roles of responsibility in both organizations at the same time creates potential issues. But that being said, because the Friends is an independent organization, it seems that we'd be bound by the rules that are acceptable for any person.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute there, Mark. We missed the last couple words you said.
What?
We didn't hear the last couple of words of Mark's sentence. I think he muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just that we're bound by the same rules that would apply to any person who wants to apply and serve on our board, simply because the Friends is an independent private.
I think this might be something that we bring up later and talk about on the next agenda, and we can look into it more.
So are you making a motion, Jill, to continue this to January?
Yes.
And is that essentially to give us as board members time to reflect? Or are we going to do another round of due diligence from a legal perspective to clarify whether, sorry for my dogs, to clarify whether in fact we don't really have any standing, regardless of our druthers, to deny someone the opportunity to be, on a multiple board. So is it for our reflection or is it for more legal confirmation?
Legal confirmation.
Okay, great. I wasn't clear on that. So,
So Amy, can you find that out? I mean, can you talk to the DA's office?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Carrie wants to chime in now, but I can consult with her and we can bring it up again at a future meeting. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay, she's coming live. There we go.
Hi, I am actually also simultaneously, on the phone with Doug. If you guys want to continue it to the next meeting, I think that's fine. I'm happy to visit with Doug a little bit more about this also. I think the points that everyone raised are good points. I think probably Amy's is not necessarily that you're legally required to not be on both boards, but maybe this board would like to make the decision that you can't serve on both, something like that. So if we want to talk about how we might structure something like that and bring it back to this board, we can do that for January.
That would be wonderful. I just think we want to make a very informed decision.
I do too.
So Jill made the motion to continue
I'll
this to
second it.
January and get some legal advice.
I'll second it. It's Heather.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to continue to January, and Carrie will bring us back some legal advice on that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. That'll be on January's agenda.
Amy,
Okay.
when you prepare the agenda, will you send the complete packet on the bylaws back out?
All right.
And I
Okay,
ask that for two reasons, because community members looking at the agenda and all the backup package, they want to see all the information in the packet.
So we're good to move on?
Mhm.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 12 for possible action, discussion of the budget priorities in preparation for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget planning process.
Okay. Maybe we should take a break.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's 10:28, so we'll take, is 5 minutes enough or do you want 10?
5's plenty.
5
5
is fine.
minutes, okay.
It's 11:28, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I thought that's been a short.
11:28, we'll recess for 5 minutes. 11:36, sorry. Okay, agenda item number 12 for possible action, discussion of budget performance in budget priorities in preparation for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget planning process. You're muted, Amy.
Whoopsie. I just remind the board that the county has said we'll be starting on the budget in January, so I don't have any deadlines today.
So we just need to have that on the January meetings agenda.
Well, yes, but I think the intention of this particular item was to just talk about what the board feels are our major priorities for the coming year, in case there's a longer lasting financial strain in general. We may need to make difficult decisions again this year as we did last year. So I think it would be important to talk about what the board feels are their top priorities.
Well, my priority still is the bookmobile. I think we need to get that back out in operation to serve the community. And I know that is an issue because of the OSHA restrictions and stuff, but I just think there's got to be some way, because it is such a large vehicle, that we could do something with that.
Yes, absolutely.
And I agree with that, because it was a big community effort, and I think they need to see it in the community. So that's a priority. Again, my priority is a comprehensive collection of materials. So more money in materials and also programs. The only way we're going to really gain back the support and things of the community, if we show the community we're involved with them and we're interested in what they're doing, and we have to have funds to do that. And then it's a priority for us.
I just think any kind of circulation that we can have, and as much as we can serve the community, is the most important thing.
I really appreciate the guidance. As I said, I don't know much about the next.
I can't hear you, Amy.
Yeah, you're a little. Amy?
Now you're muted, but we couldn't hear you when you were unmuted. Still can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was distracted. What'd you say, Kate?
Amy's trying to get her voice working again.
Oh, okay.
Well, her sound, not her voice. Nope, can't hear you again.
I don't know why.
Now we can hear you, but very, very quietly.
Oh, that's weird.
It's kind of like you're talking in a tin can or something at the end of a string. Hard to.
Nope, that's not gonna work. Can you hear me now?
Very muted.
Very quietly.
Oh. That's just weird. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Better,
Okay.
but still not great.
Unfortunately, if I log out, the whole meeting will end. So I'm not going to log out, but.
Okay, now you're better.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I think all I was saying was just that I've written down these priorities and I'll share them with the county once the process gets started.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to what's been mentioned so far is that when we're allocating money, that we, as we do programs and materials, and then if possible, find a way to restart the bookmobile program, that we allocate money for appropriate publicity. I know our Facebook page is kind of our first stop in terms of publicity and our announcements there, but I know, given the emphasis that was given in my interview as I applied for this position just a couple of months ago, that the idea of kind of ramping up publicity for existing programs and just in general is something that's on people's minds. So I want to throw that out there, that we want to, as we do things, we want to include money to publicize them.
Okay,
Good idea, Heather.
thank you.
Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. So
Yeah,
everybody's good.
He's talking. Hold on. Mark, you're muted.
He's saying he doesn't have anything, I think.
Amy,
All of the other trustees have made some good ideas. In the end, I defer to Amy's judgment about priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, you will bring the timeline to the board in January?
Absolutely. As soon as I get that information, I will share it with you.
Okay, you're good with, you got everything that everybody said, Amy?
I did,
Okay,
thank
then
you.
Move on to agenda item number 14 for possible action. Discussion and review of the report and presentation of the independent investigator regarding the recent posting of a library diversity statement. The presentation was given during a public meeting of the Library Board of Trustees on December 8th, 2020. This
Kate,
item may include a discussion.
You skipped number 13, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote the stuff underneath the wrong one.
You jumped ahead, that's all.
Sorry.
That's
Number
okay.
13, for discussion only, library director's report on the library operations and statistical reports from staff.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
So the monthly report is in front of you. There's not a lot to add other than just that on December 7th, we stopped doing browsing hours, which we just discussed a few minutes ago. The curbside pickup service is super popular. I get lots of positive feedback about it. And it's running very, very smoothly. And it's something that I think will continue for a long time. And overall operations are about the same as before. We do have 2 virtual programs that are both doing really well. And we're working on an adult one, which will be like a reading challenge in the near future. So stay tuned for that. And then my report also lists a recent check from Thrift Books to the library friends. And it's the largest check they've ever received. So that can tell you how many donations we're getting. It's an enormous amount of donations, which is great. So we're really happy to have those. And the only other thing that's not on the report is that our new employee, Scott Spangler, will be starting on Monday. He's a library technician senior. He's replacing Heather's position, and we're really excited about bringing him on board. And that's it.
And what was his name, Amy?
Oh, sorry, Scott.
Oh, Scott
Spangler. And you'll all meet him in due time, but we're really excited to have him join our team. And if there's no questions, I'll hand it over to Julia for a statistical report.
I just had one question. Under your library staff, it said 4 performance evaluations were done, but there were only 2 names.
Whoopsie.
It was just the 2?
Supposed to be 2, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, typo. Thank you. Julia, go ahead.
Okay. With the packet that went out was the statistical report for the current fiscal year. as well as last year's for comparison. Everything for the most part is very consistent over last month. We've really been consistent with our numbers. Like always, the circulation numbers, I just keep repeating it, that they're not, our hours are cut. We have, but they're still really high in numbers. The only thing I do want to point out is the inventory number for Minden. It is about 7,000 less than the previous month. That is because we've been working on a weeding project in the juvenile and adult nonfiction collections over the last few months. And so it was just a one-time purge that did all get removed at one time. Typically we do it over several months, but this time we just did it all at once. So as we start adding to the collection again, that number will go back up. I also did add curbside service pickups onto the report. It's underneath the library visits number, so you can see that number has been added on there as well. And that's all I have unless there's questions.
In the database sessions, Julia, do you know which one is the most popular? Or?
EBSCO is our most, EBSCO host is our most popular one that has the combination of all of the health databases, the auto repair databases, and as well as like the journals and ebooks for academic purposes. That's all EBSCO. So that is our most substantial one. It did go down a little bit this month, but it's still substantially higher than it was last year at this time.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions for Julia? Okay, then I will move on to agenda item number 14 for possible action. Discussion and review of the report and presentation of the independent investigator regarding the recent posting of a library diversity statement. The presentation was given during a public meeting of the Library Board of Trustees on December 8th, 2020. This item may include a discussion of whether to proceed with any of the investigator's recommended changes and ways to implement the recommendations. Nobody wants to begin. I'll start with I know a lot of people have concerns that the investigation was not necessary, but there was so much misinformation out there. And I was myself tossing up whether we really needed to follow through with this. And the Attorney General in a newspaper article stated that he had spoken to the library board, which another board member contacted me. As far as I know, none of us had ever spoken to him. And then he came to our meeting and said that he agreed with the board's diversity statement. So that just enforced for me that there was just too much misinformation out there, that we needed to proceed with it and have someone give us their determination on what happened and whether there was policy violations or anything else. So anyone else want to add their reasoning or what they felt the necessity for the investigation?
Okay, this is Mark Jensen. What you just said there is very well put. I agree with it.
I agree with it also, Kate, I think the misinformation that was out there and continued to be put out there caused a lot of questions to the community about what was the board doing and how are they doing it and were they even paying attention to what was being done. And I think that's still going on to some extent. And some of the information with the Attorney General and his comments, but also the board received great criticism about taking money out of the book budget. The board never said that. And I went back through all the minutes because I wanted to be sure that we hadn't. And that's still out there, that the board was taking money out of the book budget, the materials budget. And so all the emails and even threats about what would happen if we did that. And I think that's why we asked to have this done. We wanted to know where we're going and if we were going in the right direction of what was happening. And we, said that Amy did not violate policy. I still think if we would just known it, it'd been okay. But I think the big thing came out of this was the ongoing issue that we were asking for communication and that we needed to know in advance what was happening and give clear communication. And that was the most important thing I think came out of this investigation, which we needed.
I number one, how much money did it cost us? Where is that money going to come from? How much is the county going to pay? We don't know that information as far as I know. That's confusing to me. I think, looking through it, I read through it yesterday again, and Amy let us know that she was thinking about that before she put it on Facebook. And I remember saying, I was so proud of her and what she was saying, and that our library had that diversity statement. I shared it with my family. And I went, look what our Douglas County Library is doing. I'm so proud of her and so proud of our library for doing this. So I think we did know ahead of time, and nobody said anything. And I don't think anything would have happened if it wasn't for Dan Coverly threatening to not respond to the library if they needed him. So that's really my feeling, but I've always felt that way.
Jill, I did not know until I was told.
Well, it's in the investigation.
To clarify, Jill, we had discussed workplace diversity, hiring employees that had that diversity. That's what we had discussed in the past. We hadn't actually discussed anything like that.
It's not a discussion. She sent an email telling us that this was a diversity statement she was considering. And so we did know that, and nobody responded. And like I said,
that was the morning that it was posted on social media. Yes, we did.
No, it was like the day before.
No, it was. I did not get that, Jill.
Okay. You know what? I will look it up, and then I will get back to you guys and email you that information, because I read about it Sunday. I spent about a couple hours reading through all of this. So anyway, and as far as communications, I feel that we should be talking to other boards about how they communicate with their directors. And I have been working with Amy for 6 years, and I have never not had her answer a question or get back to me or talk to me within 24 hours, ever. And I was the chairman of the foundation. We talked a lot. We lost that money from the bookmobile. We got money back. I mean, we were in contact all the time. So I don't understand the lack of communication. So I think that the board needs to talk about how we're going to improve on communicating and letting Amy know which you want her to communicate more to you than she's already doing.
This is Mark Jensen. I agree with some of the things that Jill's saying, in that communication is a two-way street. It's not just one person, it's both people. And the investigation points out how the director might improve communications, but I think it really should be saying how the director and the trustees can be improving communication.
And some of the communication that I do see on email seems to be an attack and not a communication. I was a teacher, so I got evaluations every single year. And we talked about our goals. We talked about, what I wanted to improve on. And we talked about the good things that we did. Amy has done so many wonderful things for us this year, and I don't feel like anybody even comments on it. And it's all just an attack. It's a nitpick. It's a period's in the wrong place, or a word's not quite, And so I think we need to work on communicating in a real positive way with each other.
And I know before COVID began, Bonnie and I had set up, we were going to have meetings with Amy before our board meetings to meet with her and go over things. We had our first meeting set the week that COVID shut everything down. And we just haven't been able to follow through with that. We did have one in, I think it was October, November, I can't remember. But we had those plans to do that. It was just, this is a very odd year for the way things played out.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, it's COVID craziness. It's just been a really hard year. So to say that one person isn't communicating, it's part of the circumstances, and it's part of us as a team. And Amy is part of our team. So I think that's just really important.
And I don't think anyone's discounting that Amy's part of the team, and she did run it by library staff. She would have gotten a different perspective, possibly from board members. And that's my only concern with it, that it possibly should have been discussed ahead of time, even if it doesn't violate policy to do it, just to get that outside perspective. Because I know in Molly's report, it talks about how they're the library professionals and, they're doing all the standards and practices and stuff. We have a different perspective of just being community members who want to see the best for the library and being involved with the library. So that perspective, to get that, I think would have been a good idea ahead of time.
Okay, but maybe we can talk about that now and, come up with better policies and come up with a better plan to communicate and make that our goal as the library board and the library director. I just think that would be very helpful. I know as a teacher, if somebody, I was teaching along and just doing what I was doing, and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was doing something that you disagreed with. I didn't realize, because as a teacher, you're running your own classroom and not, nobody's in there all day long, looking at every single thing you do, but you do a tremendous amount. And the same thing with Amy. She's working so hard and put in so much time and trying to work with COVID and all the issues that have been going on. And, to all of a sudden just be, oh, this is wrong. I think we need to make the policy clearer and make our communication standards clear so everybody understands them.
Well, Jill, I agree with you, and I think it is a two-way street. But I was a president of a college, or 3 colleges, for 18 years. And I worked with boards, and I worked with faculty, and I worked with staff to be sure everybody understood what was happening. And I was surprised. I was surprised when I got the notice that she had put it up as public communication, but that was after it was already up. And my first expression, this is policy. And we had not asked for a diversity statement. We had asked for diversity in employment. And then when it was taken down, it just went totally out there for whatever reason, and it kept getting publicized and things. And so we need to have some way to handle when issues come up like that, so that it's not the director or one person speaking for the whole, and everybody understands what's being said and why. And I did not know. I read the American Library Association and the other notices, and the library, so ALA does not use some of the verbiage that was used in them. But I've looked at all of that. But when I was working and reporting to a board, I wanted to be sure that the board, when I put it on the agenda, that the board understood what was happening with that and what I meant by it, what was going to happen if we enacted that. And it was like one item we took off of the agenda about the resolution. I checked into that because I wanted to know. And I was told by Terry Willoughby that that was not in compliance with the county policy. The board shouldn't have to do that. And so it's not just, we're not here just I'm here to support Amy, but I'm here to support the library. And so we should not do things just so that there's no criticism or no argument about what's happening. We should do the best thing for the library, whoever's in that seat. And when you discount what the board does or the feelings of the board, then that leads to other issues out there in the community. And I can tell you, I've had numerous calls and emails and comments, and I think they do it because they know I'll listen to them. But that's what we have to have, that we listen and we understand what the end goal of it is. And we don't do that as a board anymore. And I know I'm just saying, under the previous director, and that's not neither, because they're not the same, when the board received everything ahead of time, even if it was just being discussed. So we didn't have these arguments on the board and the discontent and the split votes, because we understood what was happening. And that's all sometimes it is just what's happening and what are you going to do with this?
Well, I think that Amy's communicating very, very well. I feel like we get the information. I feel like if we need something more from her, then we need to let her know what that is ahead of time. I liked the part where the investigator said we might have those like private meetings ahead of time, like you were talking about, Kate, where we talk about stuff ahead of time so that when we get to our board meeting, we're more informed. I think that's a great idea.
The whole board can't meet with Amy, though. It can only be 2.
And she can't meet individually with each board member.
No, I thought the gal said that we could have private meetings ahead of time just for information, that that doesn't outbreak the open meeting law.
Well,
Carrie, can you address that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Carrie Rosser with the DA's office. So what we do also with the Board of County Commissioners is we call them 2-on-1 meetings. And so essentially it's a non-quorum of the board where you could get together and look through the agenda and ask any questions that you might be concerned about, or raise questions you might have about the library in general, suggest topics for future agendas, things like that. But it would be a non-quorum meeting. And it's just that if, for example, let's say it's Amy and Bonnie and Kate are together in a meeting, Amy could not mention what you all discuss to any other group that she meets with, but she could meet with separate groups.
Okay. And could we like alternate, like then the next month? I mean, Kate should be on it every time that somebody else meets.
If you're asking a legal question, that's not a problem. Procedurally, that would be up to you all how you would want to do that.
Okay. I think it's just something we should be considering. Does that sound good to you, Kate?
Oh, yeah, like I said, we had initiated that before COVID started. And yes, that was one of the things that I saw when she had it in her recommendations. Okay, we already had planned to do that. And we are now having the agenda prior to this occurring. I asked Amy to put it on the agenda back in July, and there were issues that people didn't understand that I had requested it. So what we're doing now is Amy gets the agenda with any items any trustee can send to her. She'll send it to me for review. Whoever is the chair gets it for review along with county council to go over it and to make sure everything is the way that it should be. So that's another piece we've put into place now to sew up that communication so that we're all on the same page with it.
Right. Like I said, I think we need to move forward and be more positive and work together better as a team. And maybe we won't have this problem ever again.
This is Mark Jensen. I would like to say that prior to the pandemic, I was always satisfied with the communication I received from the director and met with her frequently, and never had any problems doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you all hear me?
Real lightly.
Oh, sorry.
Just yell.
Okay.
I can't hear.
Who is it?
It's me. I don't know why the volume is weird, but I've.
Oh, Amy.
It's me. It's Amy talking. Sorry. I just wanted to address one thing really fast before the conversation continues. I want to make sure that we're staying on the investigation before we get into my performance, which is the next item on the agenda. And just to be really, we don't want to stray too far off of that. Having said that, though, Bonnie, I wanted to answer one of your questions about why we were getting this signature authority item on the agenda. and the fact that you talked to Terry Willoughby about it. Had you come to me, I would have been happy to explain it. And after I wrote the agenda, I found out that the county policy was just passed that contradicts with it. So it was really a matter of timing, and you can confirm that with Terry Willoughby, because I talked to her about it again yesterday. And I've also talked to Carrie about that item. That was something that was suggested months and months ago by Cynthia Gregory, and it just got pushed and pushed until it finally landed on this agenda. And then by that time, the county had passed a policy that contradicted it. Now, you said you shouldn't have had to do that, but that was your choice to go talk. That was your choice to talk to Terry Willoughby about
I understand that. I understand
You
that.
could have come to me and I would have been happy to explain it. So that's not a failure of communication on my part.
I guess, maybe, Amy, I'll just be direct with you. It was on the agenda. And yes, I could have called you, but I wanted to know.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to know, in fact,
I'm sorry, Bonnie.
was appropriate.
Bonnie.
And so I called Terry, and that's my right, and I could bring it to the board.
Bonnie, Carrie needs to speak.
I know.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry to interrupt you on this. It's like Amy said, it's probably best not to get in a back and forth about this particular issue on this item. Really, what this item is designed to discuss is the recommendations that were proposed by the investigator and how this board would like to implement them. And Bonnie, to the extent you have any specific concerns you might like to raise, maybe we save those for item number 15 if you want to bring them up then. But right now, it would really be the recommendations that the investigator had, and of course, whatever that might have stemmed from the investigation out of. But this particular issue we're talking about was after the investigation. So let's kind of try to keep that for the next item if we want.
Gary, I appreciate you, but Amy brought it up, and so I appreciate, because we need to stay on the evaluation, not the evaluation, on the investigation.
Yeah, and to the extent there's any concern about the resolution, that's on me, and we're pulling it. So
I don't want to discuss that with you anymore. That's not.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that the board accept the investigator's conclusions and findings, specifically that there was no violation of policy and that the board and director should collaboratively improve on communication methods.
I second it.
Okay, so we have
Are there any other comments about the investigation before you make that vote?
I guess I'm the only person who hasn't spoken, and I don't feel, because I've been in such short tenure and I didn't have the behind the scenes view into any of this, I can't really I can't really speak to any of it, to add anything of value except to listen and to read the materials, and that's kind of where I am. So,
Mark, would you repeat the last part of your motion?
I'd like to move that the trustees accept the findings of the investigator in the report, specifically that there was no policy violation on the part of the director, and that the board and the director should separately develop improved communication methods.
Did you get it now, Bonnie?
I did, but what is separately?
My intent is to accept the investigator's findings, but leave the nuts and bolts of communications as a separate question to be explored further.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the report and then work on communication skills, both the director and the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 15 for possible action, discussion on the annual performance evaluation of the library director, Amy Dodson, including performance, job description, achievements, job duties, and matters properly related thereto. Pursuant to NRS 241.031, 1B, and NRS 241.033, the board may consider and discuss the professional competence, character, alleged misconduct, or physical or mental health of Ms. Dodson. And does everyone have their evaluation forms?
I'm gonna share, can you all hear me better now?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm gonna share my screen just so that everybody has the right form up there. Does everybody see the blank evaluation form?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. I can take it down. I just wanted to make sure everybody had the right thing. And I have all the other documents I can put on the screen as well, if you like.
What other documents, Amy?
The ones that I sent to the board in November about highlights throughout the year, accomplishments, things like that.
And sorry, Madam Chairwoman Carey with the DA's office, just to clarify, to the extent any other documents are considered by the board, I just want to make sure we include them also in the supplemental materials. I just want to mention that.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, I have a question.
Okay.
Ever since I've been on the board, the range for merit increases has always been 0 to 3%. That never changes based on budgets or tax income or any of those things?
Well, to answer your question, that can change, and I think in previous years it has, depending on the budget of the county. I think Wendy Lang is in on this meeting, and she might be able to answer more specifically than I can, but that in the last few years, that has not changed. And I did double check that the information I had about the scoring and the commensurate raises is the most recent version, but I'll let Wendy answer that question too.
Thanks for the question, Madam Chair. With your permission, Wendy Lang from Douglas County Human Resources. Thank you. Mark, to your point, the county's range for merit increases has been 0 to 3% for about 3 or 4 years now. Prior to that, there were many years where salary increases were frozen. When the 0 to 3% range was implemented, there was also an up to 2% cost of living adjustment that's provided annually. And just a bit of backstory to that, typically the labor associations that we have throughout the county, including most library employees, bargain and negotiate for that. And the county tends to take the lead and apply consistency across the organization, for instance, throughout management positions such as Amy's.
Thank you. I was just interested in the background on how that's determined.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Mark led the evaluation last year with the new form that we have. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is we'll go through each category and you'll tell me whether you mark 3, 2, 1, or 0 in that category. If you mark 3, 1, or 0, I would like you to give me an explanation of why you chose those so that we have backup documents and narrative for why we're giving the ratings we're giving. If we do just, they're meeting the expectation, I don't think we need to give any explanation of that. But if you feel she did an excellent job on something, we need to have that. And if you feel there's lacking in some areas, I think we need to have that and document it all with the evaluation. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with leadership under manages staff. I gave Amy a 2 in that category, which is meet expectations. I can only see the document on the screen, so if you guys want to chime in, you have to They'll be who you are.
Maybe you could just put us in order so we continue to answer in order.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that actually, Heather. So if we can set up an order. No, like as each of us answers, there's a set order that will go.
Okay.
And then we won't be waiting for the first one to jump in and so on and so on. So.
Do we just want to go alphabetical?
Sure.
Fine.
Tell us what order we're in so we can write it down so we know.
Okay, Bonnie, Heather, Jill, Mark.
Okay, I put a 1.
Sorry.
Explanation, Bonnie?
Well, do I need one? I'm
Well,
not.
that's what I said. If we're going to mark her up or down in the
I'll
category, I
just
think.
say 1 because it's really difficult this year. But I think setting leadership for the staff in programs to help them things. But I know there is, I guess, a discontent among staff, but I also know they won't say anything because they're afraid. And so that's why I put 1.
Okay.
Okay.
Heather? Oh, so were you done, Bonnie?
I was just going to say that we need to follow the descriptions that are in each category. And so I don't think that Bonnie explained that one sufficiently. How am I not managing staff or directing them?
Well, I think I have explained it.
Okay.
Heather?
My turn 2.
Jill?
3. I think she's done an excellent job in providing professional training. I've been in the library a couple of times. I see people smiling. I feel like they're working as a team. I think the community sees that they've been well provided for. So I'm going to give her a 3.
Okay, and Mark?
Throughout this year, it's been difficult, of course, to really interact with Amy or the library on a meaningful level from supervision perspective. So I find it difficult to do more than or less than give Amy the rating of 2 on everything here in this evaluation. And Amy, as I've said in the past, for me, a rating of 2 is good. It means you're doing your job. Yes, there have been some lows, but there's also been some highs. There's been some possible shortcomings. There's also been some instances of exemplary leadership and planning and management. But from my distance, it's really hard for me to get too specific. And so I go with what I've always known and heard in the community. People love the library serves its community well. So all of my ratings will be 2.
Okay, leadership sets expectations. I gave her a 2. Bonnie?
I gave her a 0.
And explanation?
I've not seen, and this is for over this year. I mean, it's been difficult, but in past that the tone and direction of the library success is I haven't seen an opportunity that there's a shared vision or an understanding of what our vision and our goals are for it, and set by Amy. I know the board has set some.
Okay, Heather?
I gave it a 2.
Jill?
I gave her a 3. I think that the library, they've had unbelievable expectations and accomplishments through COVID and through the tough times. And I think that, like I said, I've been around the library. I walk by every single day and see them getting there. I see people smiling. I've talked to many friends of mine that go to the library and they feel like they're getting excellent service, and Amy has provided those expectations for everyone on her staff.
And Mark, yours is 2?
2.
Okay, personal development. I gave Amy a 1 on that one. And my reason for that one is the supervisor management course. You still have 2 classes that weren't completed. Correct, Amy?
Yes, one of them was at the very beginning that I missed just because of the date. And I haven't reattended that because it was, I guess I have to wait for it to come around again. And then with COVID and everything, I haven't attended any since the shutdown for obvious reasons.
Correct. But have you followed up and found out if they're offering an alternative way to complete those courses? And because it was a 2-year program, correct?
Yes. No, I don't know when that's going to be offered again. However, I did include a listing of all the training I have attended, and I can tell you all the training that the staff has attended as well.
I just felt that supervisor course is important, and I understand there's things come up, but that following up and finding out how you can complete that, I think, is an important piece. And so, Bonnie?
Well, I gave it a 2 because I think opportunities for the staff last year, probably more than this, were done. But also I question Amy's completion of that program because actually it goes back 3 years. And so I just think that should have been a priority to get completed during this year.
Okay, and Jill?
I again give her a 3. I feel that, you know, Amy's been involved in all this training and stuff in order to deal with COVID, how to keep the libraries open, how to keep the books sanitized, all those kinds of things. So I think that has been her priority this year, and I think it's what it should be.
I think you missed me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heather, I did. I'm sorry.
In the road. This will be easy though. I gave her a 2.
Okay, and Mark?
2.
Okay, then we'll move on to accountability and administration. I gave Amy a 1 on the policy. And that is due to the an HR policy for working from home. And has that ever been followed through with and completed?
Yes, I think Wendy can.
It's what, Amy?
I'm going to allow Wendy to answer that.
Wendy Lang, Human Resources Director, for the record. Madam Chair, with your permission, sorry, your question is whether or not there were procedures followed regarding a work from home policy. Yes and no, as I've recently learned that the work rotation or work schedule location has changed some number of months ago, and that was something I was recently made aware of. So to that extent, no, I was not aware of that initially, and we had not been able to initiate any kind of appropriate processes until recently, and that is now being done.
And I did report that to Kate at the beginning when we first shut down.
Yes, you did report it to me, but there is a county policy that had to be followed that I wasn't even aware of. So
when was that
Bonnie?
policy passed?
Pardon?
When was that policy approved?
I had that. It was, I don't know, I'd have to look it up. I've had that, but it was approved before, and then it was, I think it was approved, well, I don't know, because I'd have to look it up, but it was recent. I mean, like this year.
Yes, it was recent.
And I followed up on that because I did get a copy of it from Wendy. And I tell you why I got a copy. I was having a discussion with a community member about something, and the person told me that Amy was working 90% in the at home, and I was surprised, and I just said, "Oh," and she said, "You didn't know that?" And I said, "No," So then I asked Wendy if there was a policy about it, and she sent me the telecommunications policy. And then when Kate and I met with Amy, we discussed it. And I said, I thought the board should have been informed about her work schedule. Not why or anything, just her work schedule, like any other, if you're a supervisor of another person, employee, you know their work schedule. And so then I also talked with Patrick Cates about it, the county manager, and he said that the policy called for a plan to be submitted to the IRC, and his knowledge at that time was that it had not been done. And then Amy attended, she said she attended a meeting with the department heads and they had suspended that telecommunication policy. I don't know. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's just a common courtesy to say this, I'm working 90 or 100% from home to the board, nothing else. And there wouldn't have been confusion if somebody's talking to the community and you say, I don't know that. And that goes back to some of the communication. It's just a communication employees have with supervisors. And
did you give a rating for that category, Bonnie?
I gave her a 0 because I think that's not the only case. Earlier in the year, we had a situation where she had approved a payment of something which was against county policy. And so, and an example, even like what was on our current agenda, I wouldn't have known it wasn't in compliance if I hadn't taken the initiative to ask what it is. I wanted to know what the policy was. And so that's how I found out it was not in compliance.
Okay, Heather?
And I think that's something Amy often does. She'll say, oh, I didn't understand that, or I didn't know that. And as a director and executive, I feel that's the director's responsibility to know what the policies are.
Okay, Heather?
I gave her 2.
Jill?
I gave her a 3. I talked to Amy and so I knew she was working from home. So I like I said, I regularly communicate with her. If I have questions, I ask, open communication. So I would give her 3.
Mark?
I was aware she was working from home, 2.
So it's a 2, I'm sorry. I was confused there. Okay, on to budget and finances. I gave Amy a 2. Bonnie?
I gave her 1. And that goes back to the process, the request for supplementary budget that Amy has submitted, even like for this year's budget, submitting, by this year, I mean 2021, supplemental requests to the process without first presenting them to the board. And that was the second year in the row that's happened. And so I that's why I'm insistent on the schedule and the deadlines for this year.
Okay, Heather?
2.
Jill?
3. I think that she's done an amazing job having her budget cut, keeping up with things, answering questions, going back and looking to find out how much things are going to cost. I think she's done an excellent job.
And Mark?
2.
Real quick,
Okay.
Kate, if you don't mind, I'd like to address what Bonnie said because she said it before. I only submit things to the county as a placeholder, and every single time a budget item comes up, I explain to the finance department, regardless of whether they've heard it 100 times before or not, I always tell the finance department that the final word comes from the library board and that the deadlines do not match our meeting schedule. Often the deadlines are very quick. Our meetings are monthly, and every year, including last year and this year, I have only submitted things as a placeholder because the deadline from the county depends on it. And they know that the library board may change those things and make decisions that conflict with that. And so when that does happen, I submit those changes from the board after the deadline because our deadlines did not match up with our board schedule. And honestly, this has come up so many times, I don't feel like I should have to repeat it again.
Excuse me. I think this is a great example of the attitude. I shouldn't have to tell you anything. Even though you keep bringing it up, it's like I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and that's
not what I said.
The procedure that we've had for the last few years.
What's for the last few years?
The same type of explanation about I'm only doing this because they told me to do it or I had to do it or something. Planning with the board takes place before. You know, every year we're going to have to present a budget.
Are we good to move on to the next category?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, the Library Board of Trustees. I gave Amy a 2 in that one. Bonnie?
I gave her a 1. And most of that, I'll tell you why, is because during the year and Lisa referred to this when she resigned, that every time she made a recommendation, Amy would ignore it or laugh at it or just say it couldn't be done or something. And Lisa said, every recommendation I made has been put down. And also I think it goes to some of the things in the investigation that it's respect for the board and the board's responsibility. And I don't get that on a regular basis from Amy.
Heather?
2.
Jill?
3. I feel like Amy's done her very best to try to communicate with the board, and I think it's been a hard situation and we need to work on communication so that it's better for everybody.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, planning. I gave Amy a 2 on that. Bonnie?
I gave her a 1, and I'll go back through that too. Because I went to last year's agenda evaluation, and we had a set of goals, and she gave us a list, but most of the goals, particularly on planning and things, were incomplete. And that was in the January 2020 board minutes. And again, there's always a reason why something came up, I don't know, but if you look at that, on the goals that were set, and then you look at the items she gave us were completed, there are a lot of them not complete. And one big part was on the planning.
Heather?
2.
Jill?
3. I think she does an excellent job of planning. I feel like she's, we ask her for what's your recommendation. She gives you an example. She gives us choices. I think, especially with this year, she's done a phenomenal job planning to keep the library being part of the community and serving us. And I think she's done a wonderful job.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, and the next one is facilities and collection. And I gave Amy 3 on that one. And I did that because the remodel of the work areas, I know that was very appreciated by staff. They took on the law library and made that very functional in the building. And they continue to build on the collection and adding new technology and new virtual things for the community. So I just thought that was done really well this year. Bonnie?
I did give her a 3 on that.
What?
And
And
any,
for essentially the same reasons you did on that.
okay. And Heather?
2.
Jill?
3, same reasons you did, Kate. She's a wonderful
Okay,
job.
and Mark?
2.
Okay, and then communication. For the communication, the first piece, I gave Amy a 1 on that. And it's just, it needs regular reporting with information to the board. And I think this is where we can implement some of the suggestions of, having a bi-monthly report to the board in addition to the one that we get at the board meeting, so that we're informed when we do get contacted by the community or other county entities, that we have the information to give them, not, oh, we'll have to get back to you. I have no idea on that. And Bonnie?
I gave her a 0 because I think this, on both areas, I think these are major areas for improvement. And I think the investigation points out the need for the communication and open communication and accurate communication.
Heather?
We're on communication 2.
Okay, and Jill?
Give her a 3. I communicate with Amy regularly, and I feel like we all need to work on helping communications get even better.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, community relations, I gave her a 2 on that. Bonnie?
I gave her a 0. And I've talked to a lot of community things, and people don't know Amy in the community, and they say she doesn't attend the chamber meetings. I don't know how she advocates for the library in the community, because I haven't seen actions on that. And in promoting the library materials, and particularly I think in the Lake Tahoe area and the services there. And I think this is probably the main area I feel that we need great improvement.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you give her a 0 on that, you said?
0. No.
Okay, Heather?
On this one, I gave a 1. And my rationale is that although I've been here for a short time, and that does make it difficult to grade on a lot of these items, I do feel that it's a hot button for me and for other people in the community. Again, I'll go back to the way it was highlighted in some detail, and we spent quite a few minutes on it in my interview process recently with the board, with the county commissioners, where, I was asked in 3 or 4 different ways by different commissioners, like, what would you do about publicity? We don't feel we have publicity, and I understand that we have a website that is full of content and postings, but I feel that I have not seen in my time here as a board member anything related to publicity, anything outreach. I just think that's an area for improvement, to be honest, to bring the library more, into the community, to inform people on what is going on, to build relations in the community beyond the act of keeping our website up to date. I think, so that's my point of view, largely coming as a member of the community, coming into this position. And that's my rationale.
Thank you. Jill?
I gave her a 3. I think that one of the things, they had the response from Coverly, and that was negative, but then there's been so many wonderful examples of how Amy is a support to our community. I have friends just ask me, how's Amy doing? How's it going with the library? I completely get a different respect for all of it. I also feel that during COVID, getting out there and being out in the community and all that sort of thing is very, very difficult. So I can't complain that she's not out in the community. When I was, raising money for the bookmobile, the Rotary was in there all the time. In fact, John Karn, who probably raised most of the money for that bookmobile, he's a big man in the Rotary. He came over to my house when we had lost that money because a company went bankrupt. And he sat there and he looked at me and he said, you know what, Jill? He said, we could never replace Amy. She's the best thing that's ever happened to Douglas County Library. And that's how the community sees her, from my perspective. So I'm going to give her a 3.
Mark?
Someone else who hasn't been going to chamber meetings this year is me, and I was a frequent attender in past years, but there's no expectation that we can have Amy go to such meetings this year. And if she were able to attend such meetings, while the Chamber of Commerce is a fine organization, it would be low on the list of the groups that she should be involved with. And I know, like Jill is saying, that she's been involved with other groups. But again, there's pros and cons. I think Amy's doing a fine job.
Okay, and then we'll move on to teamwork and intergovernmental. I gave her a 1 on that one. Only because I feel there should be more communication with the county on when you do plan to do the closures and notify them before it even gets posted, just so when they start getting the phone calls and questions about it, they have the information to provide the public. And the other working remotely issue that needed to be taken care of with HR. Bonnie?
I gave her 1. And I think that is because even though I know we're in COVID and things, the county government, all the work's still going on. And when I talk to a county manager or department, and they tell me that what's happening is not in compliance, or it hasn't been filed, or it's wrong, or it's just that it was expenditures of money maybe wasn't done appropriately. I think if I call and they tell me that what I'm looking at to vote on is not in compliance, there's only one person responsible for that, and that's Amy. And I think I would like to be able to, I really and truly would like to be able to trust when I see something coming from the county that I could trust without having to call to find out if that's accurate. And when I asked Amy about her work, now Jill, you may have known and Mark may have known, but I'm a board member. I didn't know, and the board as a whole didn't know the work hours. And I didn't even know there was a policy until I called about it. But I think some of those things are just easy to do. But I truthfully would have to say, if it's on the agenda and it's a county policy or procedure, I would not trust what I'm receiving. And I, over the years, I've learned how to do that. I've learned not to do that. And I think this year was even particularly tough.
Heather?
Intergovernmental too.
Yeah. Jill?
I'm sorry, which one?
Intergovernmental under teamwork.
Okay. I feel like Amy, I gave her a 3. I feel like she has been in contact with the governor's office. I feel like she's been in contact with the other libraries. I feel like she's been trying to talk to people throughout the community in order to do the right thing for our community. So I give her a 3.
Okay, and Mark?
My rating's a 2. I see excellence in this area. I also see a few shortcomings. I do want to encourage Amy to remember that while she doesn't report to some areas of county management, to remember that those people are there to help her and to help the library, and that also there are responsibilities to those people in it.
Okay, and next one is library staff. I gave Amy a 2 in that one.
I gave her a 2.
2.
Jill?
I give her a 3. I feel like she's done as much as she possibly could to help in these circumstances.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, under integrity for conduct, I gave Amy a 2.
I gave her a 0.
Any reasoning?
Well, it's just over experience and having reports come back to find out that that's not what was said or done. And even in the last few months, I think to go out and hold media presentations saying that the board was going to take the money out of the book budget when the board didn't say that. And all of the uproar that caused more uproar than the letter. And people accused of not being responsible. And I think just to be direct with the board is better, to say this. So I just feel it's a 0. So.
Are we moving on or?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my place here.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know if I should just jump in or.
No, because we're on the integrity piece, correct?
Right, under conduct.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I just wondered if we're ready for the next, ready for me, Heather?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Heather.
Okay, 2.
And Jill?
I gave her a 3. The part about respect for cultural, religious, and gender differences. I think that's part of the diversity statement. I feel like she has stood up for our community. She stood up for everybody in our community. And I've never had her do anything but be honest and straightforward with me.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, judgment and decisiveness. And this one, I gave Amy a 1 on this one. And it's because of timely manner of completing tasks. The policies were on her evaluation last year, and they were supposed to be completed this year before September 30th meeting, and we're still working on those. And just that Amy finds if you're giving a suggestion, she almost takes it as a criticism when it's not intended that way. And I know her and I have discussed this before, that not everything is a criticism, it's just suggestion or ideas of how to approach things. So that's why I marked her down on that one. Bonnie?
I gave her a 1, and essentially for the same reasons, because if you say anything, it's seen as a criticism or that you're not telling the truth. And it's being self-directed, because the planning and the master of the strategic plan was in her goals when for evaluation last year to be accomplished this year. But she came back to the board and asked them what policies they thought should be looked at, and how we could go about doing the strategic plan. And it's if she wants somebody else to say it's okay to go ahead and do that, when in fact she should be setting up how that's going to be done and given to the board.
Heather?
2.
Jill?
A 3. I just feel like she's done a great job self-motivating herself to get through these times and deal with all of the issues that she's had this year. So I think she's done an excellent job.
And Mark.
I've never felt that Amy was questioned my questions. I've always felt that she was respectful in responding to all of my concerns, encouragement, criticisms, and answered me professionally at all times. I give her a 2.
Okay, and moving on to customer service. On this category, I gave her a 3. And the shift to the virtual and digital services was seamless and very well received in the community. They added a lot of new things to make up for the lack where we couldn't be in the library doing our regular things. And the virtual story time, the team program that they have, those have just been really well received. And I think they were implemented very quickly and just done an excellent job with that. Bonnie?
I gave her 2 because I think that is her job.
Heather?
2.
Jill?
A 3, I think she's just done an amazing job, and I hear it from people all over the community, how she's reached out and kept the library moving, and I think that our circulation proves that.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, and then service points and facilities. And that I gave her a 2. Bonnie?
For a 2.
2.
Heather?
2.
Jill?
I give her a 3. I feel like she's provided as much as she possibly could under these circumstances, and with budget cuts as well as staff cuts, she's done an excellent job.
And Mark?
2.
Okay, and leadership.
Kate, do you want to take a break so that you can do the math, or?
Yeah, that might be instead of you guys watching me scribble on paper here. So if we just take a 5-minute break, I'll come back with the totals. If anybody else tallied, please feel free to check my work.
Do you want 10 instead of 5, or would that be more comfortable?
No, I should be able to do it in 5.
Okay,
no
all
problem.
right, cool.
Thanks.
All right. Yep. think so.
Okay, and the numbers I came up with in the exceeds expectations, there were 19. Meets expectations, 44. Opportunity improvement, 13. And requires substantial improvement was 4. So that would mean the meets expectation category, which is the 2% suggested merit raise, is where it falls. Okay, and then if for suggestions for the performance goals and progress reporting. And I had the one goal to complete the supervisor's training, to notify the board what she finds out of what the opportunities are to complete it, whether it can be done remotely, whether it's offered, somewhere else, and then let us know when it has been completed. Is everyone good with that, or?
And also report to the board then how she's going to use them.
How she's going to use?
How she's going to use what she's learned in that.
Okay. And I had a goal is reports to the library board and communication, to have those bi-monthly meetings in addition to the regular board meeting, to meet with 2 of the chair, the vice chair, whoever, so that feel that we're more informed and we can have that exchange of information back and forth with her.
Is that bi-monthly or bi-weekly? Bi-monthly or bi-weekly?
Oh, bi-monthly, I'm sorry, yes, bi-monthly.
Bi-weekly, bi-weekly, okay.
So
Twice a month.
Twice, yes, thank you, Amy. And those were the only 2 that I had on there. If anyone else has goals that
I think starting in January to begin the strategic planning process. And I was looking over all that we'd given out in the previous years, even last year, and continue the update revision of library. I guess we should say update and revision of library policies.
And what do you want for timeframes on those?
By September 21.
Well, we wanted the strategic planning process to begin, and we had discussed having that in January starting with a postmortem on how, we did against goals in the last strategic process. So.
Yeah, that's what she said, strategic plan beginning in January.
In January, okay. I just want to make sure, okay.
And then is that we're going to have on every single month's agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that is monthly. So a monthly meeting update on that one.
Uh-huh.
And then the revise the policies, you want that done by September of next year?
Yes.
Okay, Amy, do you have any goals or that you would like to add to it?
Well, I was curious as to whether the board would want to have a written report more often than just at the monthly meetings. For instance, if you would like to get, a weekly report or every other week, not as formal as the monthly report, but maybe just a summary of what's happening and what I'm working on, what the staff is working on. Is that something that the board would like to have?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
Okay, would you like that weekly or every other week or whatever you want?
I think weekly is good, and then the meeting, the twice a month, the one with the regular board meeting and then the other meeting.
And then if we have questions, we can be asking you during that time rather than just once a month.
Sounds good.
I have a request, and I'm going to ask your help, and it's going to sound awkward because I haven't fully formed it yet or figured out what it should be. But here's the end goal of my request is I would like for there to be a way for us to, without getting in the thick of your knitting, to have a view into the staff that you're supervising and kind of their roles, what they're doing, their challenges. But I don't want to make it a one-time thing. It's more like, it would be more like an ongoing, rolling kind of view that would bring them a little bit more to life to us. And I don't know if that would be a short highlight, that would rotate in a weekly report. I don't know if that would mean them authoring that. So I'm not sure how to get it done or the mechanism exactly, but the end goal would be for me to have for my motivation in bringing this forth is for me and for us to have a better window into that staff and like their day-to-day lives and the challenges that they see and the little or big wins that they see. And I think that would be helpful to me. I don't know if it would be to anyone else, but.
So could we include that in the weekly summary report to include information on staff?
It occurs to me that could be one place for it, but I don't know. I'd like to hear from Amy on what she thinks, if she thinks A, that's a good idea, if it has any merit, B, if so, how it could best be brought forth. That was just an off the top of my head suggestion when I said maybe it could be a spotlight, a staff spotlight that they might even author themselves or not. I don't know, but I'd like to hear from Amy on that and see what you think. Yeah.
Well, I could definitely include that in a weekly report or at whatever time period you set. I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly that you're talking about the staff informing the board of the things that they're working on and their challenges and successes and things like that.
I'm not trying to usurp your authority and for us to become their manager. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. What I'm trying to do is try to put a more, right now when we talk about the staff and the monthly report, it's the staff as a global entity. And we don't have a sense, I don't have a sense of what the different functions are doing, what challenges they're seeing, what wins they're seeing, and so forth. And that just makes me feel, so much of our budget is our staff. And I know the staff is very important to you, and I can see it in, the time you give them in performance evaluations and, in supporting their training and so on and so forth. It's just, we as a county and a community are investing a very large part of our budget in our staff. And it would be great for us as board members to have some visibility into them as humans rather than just, as we used to say in the corporate world, FTE, which kind of, makes them economic units rather than real people. So I would like to just highlight, have some idea of these people as people and what challenges they're facing and what victories they're having. And it's not to manage them or to second guess how you're managing them. It's just to bring the whole thing to life so that I think we can be stronger advocates for the amount of staff we have, what we're paying them, our investment, in this area, and just better understanding. And I think, the more you understand and the more we understand the people that you're working with as people and your challenges as a manager, that can only help our communication, going forward. But again, I haven't thought through the best way to accomplish this without, maybe it's not a report at all. Maybe it's some kind of, dialogue or, in-person meeting or show and tell. I don't know. So I'm putting out my goal. I don't even know if any of their board members think there's anything valid in this at all.
I like that. I do.
I'm putting it out there anyway.
And maybe even once a month, have one person from the staff come to the board meeting for 5 minutes and present and talk to us. So we get to know their faces and get to know what they're doing. So if we did it every week or every month, that would be a lot of people. But maybe if we did like one a month, and Amy could invite people to come to a meeting and just present during, a 5 or 10 minute period, that might be really helpful. I agree with you. It would be nice to get to know them and see what they're doing and hear it firsthand.
I would like, if new employees some way, we could at least, maybe they could be introduced to the board at a meeting, new employees. Because I go in there and I think I talk to somebody and I say, I'm new or something. And all of our staff, except people now, are new employees and in the last few years. So it'd really be helpful to know, just to see a face. If I walk in there, I at least know it's an employee I'm talking to, not a patron or somebody. And I'd also like the freedom to talk to the employees, which we were supposed to have.
And then maybe even like give us a picture with their names under up. So when we walk in, we know their names. That would be helpful too. And then when we do get to meet them, we could put their name to their face. The next time we went in, we go, oh, I know that person. That might be helpful.
I have another goal, and I looked up the past thing, and we've had the last 3 years a goal to develop a system that will be used to evaluate library programs. And we haven't done that. It's been incomplete on all of them. And I still think we need to have a system that to evaluate the programs the library are offering. I know we have the statistics. I don't think that always shows you how effective the programs are. But there should be some evaluation system that's objective. So when you're looking at funding, you can decide which ones are worth funding and not.
And do you have a time frame on that, Bonnie, for reporting?
At least by the December 2021.
Okay, so I have complete the supervisor training and notify the board when it can be accomplished, when it's actually completed and how it will be implemented. Reports to the library board and meeting with the chair and one other member in between our regularly scheduled meetings. Then the strategic plan to begin in January, and we'll have monthly reporting and updating on that. Update and revise the policies to be completed by September of 2021. And then develop the system to evaluate the programs by December of 2021. And then the weekly summary report to include the staff updates. And that would be a weekly report, but the staff updates could be once a month.
Once a month, yeah, I think.
Yeah, monthly, I think is fine.
In regards to the frequent written reports, I think that's a good idea. I'm seeing, Amy, that there's probably going to be a lot of repetition of that information month to month, and I would encourage you to include that as you're layering on new facts and to keep the board members up to date on the various things that are going on. But also encourage you to involve your direct reports, such as Laura and Julia, in participating in preparing that report. Components of it could even have their name on them. You do a high-level summary. I could see it take a lot of your time, and so if your folks on the ground there can help you with that, I think that would be beneficial for both them and for you. And
Kate, Amy asked me a question, which I didn't answer. She wanted to know when the telecommuting policies and procedures were revised and reviewed. It was September the 4th, 2020.
Okay, Wendy, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here, Madam Chair.
Okay, so can you tell me how I get all this put together and get it to you, or does it go to the library, to both of you, so it can be concluded with our materials? How do I do this?
Well, I would recommend that you summarize, since you recorded comments or asked each board member to provide specific comments accompanying their ratings. It would be my recommendation that those specific comments and those averaged ratings, or those individual ratings with the average total, be provided on one singular form. Additionally, there was a merit increase that was awarded, I believe, or that you're contemplating awarding. And so a personnel action form should be completed, and you as the chair should sign that personnel action form. And I'm happy to help facilitate that, as well as I'm sure Amy could help get that form completed and work with you on that.
And do I have a time frame that I have to get this done?
No, you know, we run payroll in a bi-weekly format, and we're going to be submitting, sorry, just bear with me 1 second while I look at the calendar. You know, if by the middle of next week, you
Oh, yeah.
order the 24th, then it could get processed for the next paycheck.
Okay, I should have it to you within the next couple of days.
Great.
And then the form you said I have to fill out, can that be electronically sent to me, or?
It's a triplicate form. We could
Okay.
electronic format, but if you're going to physically be around, either myself or Amy would have one of those and could go through that with you.
Okay, I'll get with you and arrange that. I'll come by and do that.
Okay.
in the past, we've all had to sign the evaluation. I'm assuming that this year the chair's signature is adequate once we pass a motion to approve the evaluation.
Yes, thank you, Board Trustee Johnson. I think that, particularly if you guys wanted to clarify that in your motion, that you're authorizing the chair of the board to execute all the documents relative to this action item on today's agenda.
So do we, either Wendy or Carrie, we have to make a motion to approve the evaluation?
I think at this point, it would be cleanest if there was an actual motion related to you've pretty much summarized the form as you've completed it based on everyone's input. And so if someone moved to accept that and authorize you to sign it on behalf of the trustees, as well as any other necessary paperwork.
I so move to accept the evaluation as it's been discussed, award a merit increase of 2% and authorize the chair to act on the trustees' behalf. in that regard.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carried. And we will
Here.
move on to agenda. Oh,
Chairperson Garahan.
oh, sorry.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good, good. Do I get an opportunity to speak? You asked me if I had goals.
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, I thought you had told me one of them. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you all for your feedback. The first thing I'd like to say is that the successes that the library has experienced over the last year and always is largely due to the staff. I want to make sure that it's clear that I have the fortunate opportunity to lead such a wonderful group of people. I think they're all amazing in their own ways. And so regardless of the scores that I receive, the staff is responsible for the success of the library as much as I am. And I think that they're incredible. And so my opportunity to serve the community by leading the staff is something that I take very seriously. And I think you all know that I always think of the staff first. They're very, very important to our success, and we couldn't serve the community without them. So I want to give them full credit for all of their amazing work. As for myself, as I said, I appreciate the feedback, and I will bring all of these goals to fruition. I will start sending weekly reports. In January, I will start meeting with you however often that you like, starting in January, unless you would rather me start earlier than that. But I will make sure that those goals are accomplished. This year has been extremely challenging for everyone, not just me, but for the staff, for the patrons, for volunteers, for everyone. And of course, this pandemic has been driving all of that. But I will say that this year is a strange exception, and I hope that 2021, we can return to normal functions and we can begin having programs again and doing outreach and running the bookmobile. I hope all of those things will come back to us in the next year. And so I'm really, really looking forward to getting back to our routine operations. Having said all of that, COVID has presented more challenges than any of us are ever accustomed to. And so I just want to say that, again, the staff has adapted very quickly, but I feel that I have done a good job in carrying the library through this challenging time. If I have anything to discuss with you all individually, I certainly will. And I won't take up that time right now. I do appreciate that you accepted and responded to the investigation done by the third-party investigator. I'm glad that it was so clear that I did not violate any policies. I think that the investigation largely told us what we already knew. And I'm very happy with the outcome of it. And I think that's the end of my comments, but I'm happy to answer questions that relate to the evaluation.
Call from Coleman Robert.
No.
Oops.
Call from Coleman Robert. Call from
Okay.
Coleman Robert.
Robert's calling.
Call from Coleman Robert.
Okay, so we'll move on to, if no one has any more discussion, move on to agenda item number 16. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did I skip anything else? Okay, closing public comments. And it is now 1:24. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Library Board of Trustees. Any written public comment received after 4 p.m. the day before the Library Board meeting will be compiled and added as supplemental materials to the county's website and distributed to the Library Board of Trustees within 24 hours after the meeting. To make a public comment during this meeting, the public must call 783-6024 and leave a voice message which will be played for the Library Board of Trustees and the public. So Veronica, do we have public comment?
We do have public comment. This next public comment I will play for you was received at 10:16.
Maybe a duplicate message because I neglected to press pound before, and so I apologize. I just wanted to make sure that it gets through. My name is Charles McQuarrie. That's HARLMCQUARIE. And I'm calling in support of Library Director Amy Dodson and of the library's much-needed statement that Black Lives Matter. And in addition, I'm calling on the board to support that statement. The white supremacist backlash to this statement makes the stakes here very clear. By continuing to investigate and undermine Director Dodson and the diversity statement, this library board is squarely implying that the Douglas County Library is not actually for all the citizens of Douglas County, but rather is only for the loud, white, racist ones. And contrary to what those loud, white racists would wish to be the case, Douglas County is not actually comprised entirely of white people, and the responsibility of the library board is to maintain the library as a safe space for everyone in Douglas County. Currently, the board is failing at that responsibility. Director Dodson is a library professional who crafted a responsible statement which was in line with national conversations and professional best practices in the library field. I urge the board to clarify that the library is a safe space for everyone in Douglas County, rather than just the latest target of white supremacist vitriol. The board can easily do this by supporting Director Dodson and supporting the strong diversity statement. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, this next public comment came in at 10:31.
Hi, my name is Jim Rosso, DLROSSO. I'm a librarian, and I'm just calling to voice my support for Amy Johnson. I think her actions have been commendable, and she's been a great example of how to lead in the face of a lot of adversity. And I just wanted to say that as a librarian, as someone who cares deeply about libraries working with and supporting their communities, I am in solidarity with her, and I'm just calling to voice my support. Thank you so much.
Okay, next public comment came in at 10:31.
Hello, my name is Violet Fox, VIOLETFOX, and I'm a librarian living in Minnesota. I want to voice my support for the Douglas County Library Director, Amy Dodson. Her efforts in confirming that Black lives do indeed matter was part of a nationwide effort to address the history of racism in this country. She should have been supported by the Douglas County Library Board of Trustees and the administration of Douglas County, and not challenged with a wasteful investigation. I hope that the administration will find funds to support the library's financial losses, which threaten literacy efforts for the citizens of Douglas County. And I hope that the administration will find other ways to support their citizens of all races, including Black citizens. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that was the last message received.
And does anyone remember what time I opened public comment?
Sorry, no, sorry.
It was 1:24.
Okay, so we have.
I looked at the clock on my computer, so.
Madam Chair, Carrie Rosser with the DA's office, if we could just extend it an extra 5 minutes from right now, just based on the technical issues we had in the beginning, just to make sure that
Okay.
attempts to call in.
Kate, may we ask questions?
I don't know, ask Carrie if it's appropriate during this time.
May we ask questions, Carrie?
I guess that depends on the kind of question. If you're asking about a time issue or something, we could do that. But if it's anything substantive.
I'll forget it.
Okay.
Carrie, I have a question.
Okay.
Is it ever allowed for staff to make public comment at a meeting? Not me, but other staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
From like an OML perspective, yes.
That's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah.
And my watch is saying 5 minutes in case anyone was waiting for me to say that.
I was waiting for it to show 1:35.
Okay.
Thank you.
Veronica, did any other come in?
No, we have not received any more public comments.
Okay, then at this time, public comment will be closed and this meeting will be adjourned. I hope everyone has very Merry Christmas and please a happier New Year.
Yes.
You too, Kate.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.